I busied myself to think of a story which would speak to the mysterious fears of our nature and awaken thrilling horror.
Hi, I'm CB Smith, and we're going to be talking about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, both the movie and the book that's based on. And normally I don't do spoilers, but this one will be an exception. In 1992, Francis Ford Coppola and Company made Bram Stoker's Dracula, an adaptation of, well, Bram Stoker's Dracula, a title that gives the impression that this is the authentic adaptation of Stoker's original novel. It's definitely an adaptation, that's for sure. In 1994, Coppola was meant to do the same treatment to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, titled, well, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Instead, Coppola stayed on as a producer and gave the directing to Kenneth Branagh to adapt Shelley's novel. Is it faithful to Shelley's novel? Yeah. Question mark. Last video I talked about how the 1931 Frankenstein movie was not actually an adaptation of the novel, but on a series of plays that have changed, tweaked, and redid the story for over 100 years. In the end, very little of the book is actually in that original movie, but at the same time it did keep the spirit of the novel. This movie begins how the novel does, with a ship sailing across the Northern Ocean by Captain Walton. Walton writes to his sister about his journey. Last Monday, we were nearly surrounded by ice which closed in the ship on all sides, scarcely leaving her the sea room in which she floated. Our situation was somewhat dangerous. And this is how the movie translated that line. Hold on, man! Hold on! Well, the novel doesn't mention the frozen mouth of hell swallowing up a crewman, but it does not mention it. It's here Walton and his crew meet a stranger on the ice. This is how both Walton and readers first meet Victor Frankenstein. This is the framing device for the novel, Victor telling his story to Walton in a series of letters to his sister. The movie jumps to Victor's childhood, being an only child until an orphaned Elizabeth comes to live with them.
You must think of her as your own sister.
You know, I kind of get where Victor is at here. All of my brothers and sisters are my half-siblings, but they are my brothers and sisters. I love them and treat them no different than any other siblings would do.
Are you my sister?
Sister.
Friend? Lover?
Not like that. I mean, the porn parody doesn't even go there. The relationship between Elizabeth and Victor is, in the novel, this is accurate to the novel. Elizabeth was an orphan that was bought by Victor's mom and presented to him as a present. Again, Victor is the one telling the story to Walton, and he's trying to make him out to be Elizabeth's protector. And, well, Elizabeth Lavenza became the inmate of my parents' house, my more than sister, the beautiful and adored companion of all my occupations and my pleasures. Throughout the novel, Elizabeth is referred to as his cousin. It's a leftover part of the original 1818 edition of the novel, where Elizabeth was Victor's actual first cousin. Now, this movie adapts the 1831 revised edition of the novel, which is the one that is the most widely available, where the cousin angle is dropped, but the quasi-brother-sister-cousin angle stays, and the movie sticks to this bit hard.
Brother and sister. No more.
No, husband and wife.
What are you doing, step-bro?
Before Victor goes to college to practice medicine in Ingolstadt, his mother passes away. In the movie, she dies giving birth to Victor's younger brother, William. It's a pretty gruesome scene, so I'm not going to show it. In the novel, she doesn't die from childbirth, but rather from scarlet fever. Scarlet fever, and more so tuberculosis, helped shape what we know as Victorian and Gothic fashion in the early to mid-1800s. The diseases were romanticized, in a way, because of how the victims looked when they died. Pale skin, red lips, a thin figure. They left a pretty corpse, is what I'm trying to say. Middle to upper class women would then imitate these looks through clothing and makeup, as well as the depiction of the disease in literature. What I'm trying to say is that coronavirus romance novels is not that weird. It's tradition. You would think that losing a mother would be the catalyst that would have Victor turn towards his obsession to finding a cure for death, but he was actually pretty chill about it. The time at length arrives when grief is rather an indulgence than a necessity, and the smile that plays upon the lips, although may be deemed sacrilege, is not banished. Instead of humanizing Victor Frankenstein, making his obsession more grounded in a human emotion, the novel instead shows the reader that Victor is already the detached mad scientist. He tells Walton some degree of guilt, but even the death of a mom barely slows this guy down. In the movie, not so much.
You should never have died. No one need ever die. I will stop this.
Once enrolled in school, Victor acts like every other college freshman, thinking he knows more than his professors, and immediately gets shut down when he realizes he is in way over his head. Professor Krempt is the mean one, condescending and patronizing on Victor, but in the novel gives him a list of books to read for reference. A mean teacher, sure, but at least showed some care for his students. Professor Waldman, on the other hand, is the nice one, putting Victor under his wing, teaching him the importance of chemistry as well as to broaden your horizon in general. He also told Victor the importance of philosophers. Waldman was a realist, pointing out that alchemy, turning lead to gold, and immortality potions are an impossibility. But this got Victor excited when he exclaims, "Soon my mind was filled with one thought, one conception, one purpose. So much has been done, far more will I achieve. I will pioneer a new way, explore unknown powers, and unfold to the world the deepest mysteries of creation." Dr. Waldman is turned in the movie into a creepy recluse of a teacher that still brings Victor under his wing, and even hinting that he may have actually created a creature at some point in the past himself, but he had to stop.
I abandoned my other researches many years ago. Why? Because they resulted in abomination.
As to how the creature gets created in the book, it's complicated. The novel doesn't go into much detail about how the creature is created. We get lines about how Victor went to animal slaughterhouses, the laboratory at the college, and charnel houses to get his body parts. He never actually robs a grave. There's an emphasis on chemistry, but electricity is not even mentioned in the original edition of the novel. It was added later on into the 1831 edition that Mary wrote. This version is the one you most likely read. The creature appears at around a quarter into the book, with no real narrative given to us as to exactly how it's done. This leaves room for movie makers to interpret effectively any way that they want, and it still technically would be faithful to the novel. Right, so about that, who would have guessed eels?
More direct power.
This is stupid. This is so goofy. I absolutely love it. The movie also added amniotic fluid from women giving birth into the ingredients. Symbolically, I can see why. The creature is essentially being born, so you'd want that connection, and oh my god. There's just so much. How did he even get it all? During these experiments, Victor tries to get his friend Henry at first to help in the experiments. You'd think this would turn him into an Igor-type character, and a character added into later adaptations. I mean, logistically, how many women were even giving birth at the time for him to get all that fluid? But Henry refused. With his creation almost created, Elizabeth comes to visit Victor, worried about him, since he hasn't written back to her. This scene is carried over from the 1931 movie, not from the book. He definitely would have needed like 10 buckets, like every night for like a month to fill that whole tub. Eventually the creature is born and oh, so much fluid. In the book, Victor immediately sees what he created and flees in terror, unable to even look at what he created. But in this version, Victor is more disappointed at the creature. Like, dude, you stitched a bunch of corpses together in a vat of baby juice. what'd you expect? The monster comes back to life, scaring Victor, where he hallucinates Professor Krempt lecturing him on creating a monster from the body parts of criminals. This is another aspect of the 1931 Frankenstein movie instead of the novel, where a criminal brain is used for the monster, and it's implied that that is the reason for its killing and not the, abandonment and abuse. It gives a lot of eugenics vibe, and I'm not a big fan of it. The creature escapes with Victor thinking it died of the plague. Right, I forgot to mention, this movie added a whole subplot that wasn't in the book about a bunch of people not listening to doctors refusing to get vaccinated. And this brings a cholera outbreak in the city, which leads to the place going on lockdown and on quarantine. I swear, I didn't know about this when I picked to do this episode. For the next few chapters, Victor is back home trying to recover for almost 2 years, thinking his creation is dead. He's traveling alone in the Valley of Chaman in France, relaxing in nature, wishing to the spirits, allow me this faint happiness, or take me away from the joys of life. Suddenly on cue, the creature appears to catch Victor and us, the reader, up on everything that's happened. In both book and movie, the creature comes across a cabin owned by an old blind man and his kids. Now, in the book, Felix and Agatha are brother and sister. In the movie, they're husband and wife, but with this book and this movie, it could be both. You don't know.
What are you doing, stepbro?
The creature hides away in a hovel watching the family. Here he learns to both speak and read. The creature comes across a series of books. At this point, the novel stops wholesale for the creature to just gush about his new favorite books. This is essentially Mary Shelley telling the reader the books that inspired her to write Frankenstein. There are literary references all over the novel. The first one the creature read was The Sorrows of Werther by Johann von Goethe, which the creature describes the main character of Werther as a more divine being than I ever beheld or imagined. His character contained no pretension. Okay, I'm gonna have to stop you right there, Frank. Yeah, I know this is literally your first book that you ever read, but Werther most definitely was pretentious. The Sorrows of Werther is about this mook from the city coming down to the countryside, looking down on everyone like a patronizing asshole on everyone, but he meets this lady Charlotte. They hit it off, but he finds out, Charlotte's engaged to this guy named Lot. He's a good guy, a decent head on his shoulders. Maybe he's a little boring, but hey. He actually goes to Werther, right? And he's like, dude, I know you're into my chick, but she only likes you as a friend. But hey, if you're cool, then we're cool. Anyway, Werther goes through her mail, keeps making passes at her, the jerk. And he tries to tie the knot with this one lady who looks like Charlotte. Oh, that doesn't end well. And he just goes on and on and on about how miserable he is. God bless you, my dear friends. May he grant you the happiness which he denies me. And he goes, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Actually comparing himself to the Jesus man. Aye. And then he has the gall to ask, have men before me ever been so wretched?
Look, you ever read that book, She's Just Not That Into You?
The Sorrows of Young Werther was a smash blockbuster book. There were fan fiction and pseudo-sequels made, people wanted to cosplay as the characters in the book, and it was blamed for a rash of suicides at the time. The Sorrows of Young Werther was a novel that helped inspire the Romantic era of literature, where places of nature were an escape of the hardships of the industrial age, where men and women can indulge in their feelings and the freedom of love whomever you choose. Mary was raised by the writings of her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, whom was a famous feminist and philosophical writer before her death due to complications giving birth to her daughter. Most definitely, she read The Sorrows of Young Werther. The Sorrows of Werther wasn't the only book that the monster read. The main book the monster references throughout the story is John Milton's Paradise Lost, an epic poem following the devil and his followers cast out from heaven. Paradise views the devil in a sympathetic light, where he utters the famous line, "Better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven." The monster views himself much like the devil, maybe even worse, because even the devil had friends. The fallen angel becomes the malignant devil, and yet, even that enemy of God and man had friends and associates in this desolation. I
am alone.
The creature being a big bookworm is cut out, as far as I know, from every adaptation of the novel. While the monster does learn to read and write through the family in the movie, they face eviction from their landlord because they can't afford rent because of the quarantine.
We'll sell another pig at market.
We can't. Not until they lift the quarantine.
Again, I swear, I didn't know.
The creature shows himself to the blind old man, and there's a hope, a chance, that maybe he can make a connection, right?
No. And there's a whole lot more instances in the book of the creature getting beat up, shunned, people afraid of him, and even shooting at him, after he rescues a little girl from drowning, no less. So now he hates humanity, but most importantly, he hates Victor Frankenstein.
I will have revenge. Frankenstein!
The first one to get killed is Victor's little brother William, whom at first he wanted to kidnap and raise him to love him, only to gleefully murder him in the end once he found out that he was a Frankenstein. He then seeks Victor out to make a proposal, make him a bride. The Bride of Frankenstein, not just her design but her actual creation, is a product of the Bride of Frankenstein movie, from which, while a sequel to the 1931 movie, is also an adaptation of more material from the novel. In the movie, however, she actually is created. In the novel, Victor doesn't finish creating the bride.
I have to give credit to Matt Curione and Jacob Tenoble from the Monsters Never Die podcast to bringing this up to my attention. You guys should check out that series, it's great. While depictions of the monster and his bride are given a positive light, them being together in the pop culture zeitgeist, in the original movie, she's created and her first and only choice, once she's given her own free will, was to reject the monster.
In the original novel, Victor begins to create the bride. In the middle, he realizes and what might happens in the movie. Just because he creates a being whose entire purpose in life is to be the creature's bride does not mean she'll want to be with him once she's created. She would have her own agency, and the monster only promises to leave humanity alone once he has his bride. The creature's intention is what happened with William, not thinking about the free will of those around him. He may not take the rejection very well.
We belong dead.
Like in the novel, in this movie, the creature kills Elizabeth as revenge on Victor for not creating his bride. Unlike the novel, the movie decides to also be a remake of Bride of Frankenstein and have Victor bring Elizabeth back the way he created the creature. And come on!
Again, where did he get all that fluid?
In his obsession after bringing her back, he dances with her half-dead body in hopes of her remembering him. In the end, he broke. Now, the creature, seeing Elizabeth, wants her too. So now Victor is fighting for possession of his sister-cousin wife with his son, whom is fighting with his dad for possession of his mom's second cousin aunt.
Their genogram is a circle.
She's mine.
She's mine! She said my name! She remembered!
What are you doing, stepbro?
Just like what Victor feared in the novel, and like the Bride of Frankenstein, Elizabeth doesn't want either of these two psychos, and lights herself on fire. This is a long, long run, and all in one take. I mean, it takes the fire scene in Return of the King a run for its money.
That was the worst pun ever.
The movie and novel ends how it began, with Victor on the ship with Captain Walton, and Victor lies dead in the captain's cabin. The creature makes one last visit. In the novel, he spends pages and pages lamenting how society has wronged him, how Victor wronged him, and how revenge didn't make him any happier. The movie shortens it down.
He was my father.
And that's Frankenstein, a story that continues to inspire so many other works, from the movies to the novels. Lovecraft's Reanimator is one of them, Rocky Horror Picture Show, and of course, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. No, not Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I mean Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. No, I don't mean Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I mean Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. By Leonore Flesher.
Movie novelizations are not a weird thing. I made a whole video about it talking about Hook. It's an older video, the audio is terrible, but I still like it. You guys should really check it out, pretty please. Even novelizations to movies that themselves based on books isn't that weird either. It's still happening recently. But there's something about the movie advertising itself with its name that it is the definitive adaptation, itself getting a novelization as well. Fred Saberhagen got the job novelizing Bram Stoker's Dracula because of his past Dracula books that he made. Leonore Fletcher got the job because she's a veteran of the novelization business. She wrote under so many pseudonyms, it's pretty much impossible to know exactly how many books that she wrote. How she managed this? Well, she locks herself in a room, takes a bunch of amphetamines, and churns out a novel of the script that was given to her in the span of a weekend. Later on, she said that she got off the drugs and focused on writing as much as she could. In the 1970s, she became a columnist for the Washington Post, where she mostly interviewed other authors as well as writing some op-eds. That you can still find online, including one article on the status of publishing houses consolidating into the larger companies that we now have today, way back in 1979. I recommend it, it's really good.
Okay, so I basically just spent a minute gushing about this woman. Is her novel to the movie any good? Yeah. Question mark.
The beginning of the novel starts at the beginning of the universe, with the Big Bang, mentioning the long evolutionary trek from bacteria to fish to people like Martin Luther King Jr. I never imagined seeing MLK's name dropped in a period piece sci-fi novel, but hey. Fletcher also added elements that were in the original novel, but not the movie, like how Victor's parents met. See, Victor's dad was friends with Victor's mom's dad, and when he died, she was cared for by him, like a father figure, which then turned to her marrying him, making Victor's mom a sort of mom's sister to Victor. And good God, this is confusing.
The Lannister family tree is easier to follow.
We also get scenes that were cut from the movie, such as when Victor has this hallucination after making the creature. There was supposed to be a dream sequence of him in a ballroom surrounded by corpses. That'd be pretty cool. One other scene was when the creature was helping Victor make his bride. He went out to murder a prostitute for fresh, materials. Yeah, this movie lifted some ideas from Frankenhooker, of all things. In the end, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the movie, is something. It takes material from the novel, but also from movies before it. It tries to be really big and ambitious, some for the better, some for the worse, some for the... I don't know.
I hope everyone is staying safe this year, but also having a happy Halloween. I should be done with Frankenstein now.
30 years ago,
What was that?
Roger Corman began to explore the dark side of the American psyche. He feels the world is ready for the greatest horror story ever told, as it's never been told before.
Oh, no.
This is CB Smith, and thanks for taking the page.